In a small, serene village tucked away in the folds of mist-covered mountains, there lived an ancient Zen master named Ryoma. His wisdom and tranquility were legendary, and people from distant lands would travel for days to seek his counsel. They came with various burdens: fear, anxiety, confusion, but most of them shared one common struggle: overthinking. They were trapped in the whirlwind of their own minds, constantly replaying past mistakes, worrying about future outcomes, and unable to find peace in the present moment. One quiet morning, a young man named Taro arrived at Ryoma's temple. His shoulders were heavy with worry, his brow furrowed in deep thought. He had heard of the master's ability to help people find inner peace, and he had traveled long and far to ask for guidance. "Master Ryoma," Taro began, his voice trembling slightly, "I cannot stop overthinking. My mind is always racing, full of doubts and worries. Every time I try to focus on something, another thought interrupts. I feel like I'm drowning in my own mind. How can I find peace?" Ryoma studied Taro carefully, his eyes kind but knowing. He motioned for Taro to follow him. Without saying a word, the master led the young man to a small pond hidden deep in the temple's garden. The water was crystal clear, reflecting the beauty of the sky and the surrounding trees. The air was still, and the only sound was the soft rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. "Sit," Ryoma instructed, pointing to a rock by the water's edge. "Watch the water carefully." Taro sat, feeling both confused and curious. Ryoma handed him a small, smooth stone and said, "Throw this stone into the pond." Taro took the stone and threw it into the water, watching as it sank to the bottom. Immediately, ripples spread outward, disturbing the calm surface of the pond. The water, once still and clear, was now filled with waves that distorted the reflection of the trees and sky. "Look," said Ryoma. "What do you see?" "The water is no longer clear," Taro replied, his gaze fixed on the ripples. "The reflections are distorted, and it's harder to see the beauty of the surroundings." Ryoma nodded. "This is what happens to your mind when you overthink. Each thought, each worry, is like a stone thrown into the water. The ripples cloud your clarity, and you lose sight of the peace that lies beneath the surface." Taro stared at the pond, deep in thought. He could feel the truth in the master's words. His mind was like that pond, clouded with worries and doubts that kept him from seeing clearly. "Now, I want you to sit and be still," Ryoma said. "Focus on your breathing, not on the thoughts in your mind. Just watch the water and let the ripples fade. Don't chase them. Don't try to stop them. Let them come and go, like clouds in the sky." Taro closed his eyes and began to follow the master's instructions. At first it was difficult. Thoughts kept coming. Memories from the past, fears about the future, questions about his purpose. But instead of holding on to each thought, Taro reminded himself to let them pass. He focused on his breath, inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly. Gradually, he felt a shift inside. The chaotic thoughts began to lose their power over him, like ripples in the pond slowly fading away. Minutes passed, and Taro opened his eyes. The pond before him had returned to its calm state, the water now reflecting the sky and trees with perfect clarity. It was as though the stone had never been thrown in at all. Ryoma smiled softly. "This is how you stop overthinking, Taro. You must learn to observe your thoughts without attaching to them. They are like the ripples in the pond, temporary and fleeting. If you focus on them, you create more disturbance. But if you simply let them pass, the mind returns to its natural state of stillness." Taro nodded slowly, the wisdom of the master beginning to sink in. "But master," he asked, "how do I stop the thoughts from coming in the first place? It feels like they just keep coming back." "Ah," said Ryoma, "this is where patience and practice come in. The mind is like a wild river, full of currents and distractions. But over time, with practice, you can learn to navigate it. Meditation helps you train your mind to remain still, even amidst the chaos. And mindfulness in everyday life, being fully present in each moment, helps keep the ripples from taking over." The young man sat in silence for a long time, reflecting on the lesson. For the next few days, he followed Ryoma's teachings, meditating by the pond and practicing mindfulness as he went about his daily tasks. At first, his thoughts still came rushing in, like a flood. But Taro slowly grew more adept at letting them pass without judgment or attachment. He realized that overthinking wasn't something that could be stopped all at once, but with patience, the power of the mind could be redirected toward calmness and clarity. Weeks passed, and one day Taro found himself sitting by the same pond, but this time he was different. His mind was quiet, not because there were no thoughts, but because he had learned to let them float away like leaves on the water. He had found stillness, not by trying to control his thoughts, but by embracing the natural flow of the mind and letting go of his attachment to every passing worry. When he returned to Ryoma, he had a peaceful light in his eyes. "Master," Taro said, "I understand now. To stop overthinking, I must let my thoughts come and go. They don't define me, and I don't need to chase every one of them. Peace is found in the present moment, in letting go of the noise in my mind." Ryoma nodded approvingly. "Yes, Taro, you have learned well. Remember, the key to peace is not the absence of thoughts, but the ability to remain centered despite them. As the pond remains calm despite the stones that fall into it, so too can you remain calm in the face of your thoughts. With time and practice, your mind will become your ally, not your enemy." Taro smiled, deeply grateful for the master's wisdom. He left the temple that day, not with a mind free of thoughts, but with a heart filled with peace, a peace that would remain with him wherever he went, as long as he remembered to let go of the stones.